He had everything a man could pray for: money, power, influence. But after 10 years of marriage, the one thing he wanted never came. So he made a decision he believed was logical. 1 year later, life answered that decision in a way he never saw coming. Stay with me. Because this is not just a story about divorce. It's about timing and the price of impatience. Before we go further into this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Who was she before the divorce? What really broke the marriage? Was the problem truly what everyone believed? And why did what happened 1 year later shake an entire family to its core? Some say life rewards patience. Others say life punishes delay. But what happens when the truth arrives after it's too late? This story will answer one question many people are afraid to ask. When blessings come, late, are they still blessings? Or do they arrive as reminders of what we threw away? His name was Marcus, a self-made billionaire who built his empire from the ground up: real estate, tech investments, hotels across 3 continents. By the time he was 35, his name carried weight in boardrooms across the country. He was the kind of man who believed every problem had a solution. You just needed the right resources, the right doctors, the right strategy. He was disciplined, logical, a man who approached life like a business deal. And for the most part, it worked. Until it didn't. Her name was Claire. She wasn't the kind of woman who commanded attention when she walked into a room, but those who knew her, truly knew her, understood her strength. She had been there from the beginning, back when Marcus was working 2 jobs and dreaming of his first property deal. She typed his proposals late into the night. She encouraged him when investors said no. She believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. And when success finally came, she never asked for credit. She just smiled quietly and continued building their home. Claire believed in prayer. She believed in patience. She believed that some things couldn't be rushed, no matter how much money you had. They met in college. Marcus was studying business. Claire was studying education. He noticed her in the library one evening, surrounded by books, completely absorbed. He walked over, made a joke about the stack of textbooks, and she laughed. That laugh stayed with him. They started dating 3 months later. 2 years after that, they were married. It was a small wedding, just family and close friends. Nothing extravagant. Marcus promised her that one day, when he made it, he'd give her the world. And for a while, he did. Beautiful home, vacations, comfort. But the one thing they both wanted most remained out of reach. The first year of trying felt normal, hopeful even. They were young, healthy. There was no reason to worry. But when the second year passed with no news, the conversation started to shift. Maybe we should see a doctor, Marcus suggested one evening. Claire agreed. It made sense. They went to the best fertility clinic in the city, ran every test imaginable: blood work, ultrasounds, hormone levels. Everything came back normal for both of them. The doctor smiled and said, "Sometimes it just takes time. Keep trying. Stay positive." So they did. But with each passing month, the hope began to thin. By year 4, the visits to the doctor became routine. They tried different approaches, monitored ovulation cycles, changed diets, reduced stress. Marcus even cut back on work, something he never thought he'd do. He wanted this. He wanted a son, someone to carry his name, someone to build a legacy for. Claire wanted it too, but in a different way. She wanted a family. She wanted to hold a child and feel complete. She prayed every night, sometimes out loud, sometimes in silence. She believed God had a plan. She just didn't know when it would unfold. But the pressure didn't come from within the marriage alone. It came from the outside. Family gatherings became uncomfortable. Marcus's mother would ask, with that tone mothers use when they're trying to sound concerned but really just want answers, "So, any news yet?" Claire would smile and shake her head. His mother would sigh and say something like, "Well, don't wait too long. You're not getting any younger." At holiday dinners, cousins would show up with their children, babies, toddlers, noise and laughter filling the house, and Claire would hold them, play with them, then hand them back and feel the ache settle deeper. Marcus started noticing the whispers, the glances exchanged between relatives when they thought he wasn't looking. One evening, after a family dinner, his uncle pulled him aside. "Marcus, I'm just going to say it. Have you thought about seeing other doctors? Maybe the problem isn't you." Marcus stiffened. "What are you trying to say?" His uncle shrugged. "I'm just saying, man to man, you might need to consider your options. You've got everything going for you. Don't let this one thing hold you back." Marcus didn't respond, but the seed was planted. And once doubt enters a marriage, it grows quietly in the dark. By year 7, the emotional distance between them was noticeable. Not loud, not violent, just quiet. They still loved each other, but love under pressure changes shape. Marcus began to withdraw. He threw himself into work, meetings, deals, travel, anything to avoid the silence at home. Claire felt it. She tried to reach him, cooked his favorite meals, planned date nights, but he was already somewhere else mentally. She started spending more time at church, volunteering, praying, finding peace in places that didn't remind her of what was missing. One night, after another failed attempt at conversation, Marcus sat alone in his office. He stared at a photo on his desk. It was from their wedding day. Claire was laughing. He was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. He picked up the frame and whispered to himself, "What happened to us?" But deep down, he knew. The problem wasn't that they stopped loving each other. The problem was that they started blaming the silence. And when you can't name the enemy, you start blaming each other. Year 8 brought a new doctor, a specialist, expensive, highly recommended. They ran more tests, more procedures. Marcus paid for everything without hesitation. This time, the doctor suggested in vitro fertilization. It was invasive, exhausting, emotionally draining, but they agreed to try. The first round failed. The second round failed. By the third attempt, Claire was physically and emotionally worn down. She sat in the clinic bathroom one afternoon, staring at another negative test, and broke down. Not because she had given up, but because she was tired of hoping and hurting at the same time. Marcus didn't know how to comfort her anymore. He felt helpless, and for a man who solved problems for a living, helplessness felt like failure. He started having thoughts he never imagined he'd have. Thoughts about what life would look like if he started over, with someone else, someone younger, someone who could give him what he wanted. He hated himself for thinking it. But the thoughts kept coming. And over time, thoughts turn into possibilities, and possibilities turn into decisions. By year 9, the marriage was hanging by a thread. They barely spoke. When they did, it was about surface things, bills, schedules, nothing real. Claire knew something had shifted. She could feel it. One evening, she asked him directly, "Marcus, do you still want this? Do you still want us?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "I don't know anymore." Those 4 words shattered her. But she didn't cry. Not in front of him. She just nodded and walked away. That night, she prayed differently. She didn't ask for a baby. She asked for clarity. She asked for peace. She asked God to show her what to do. 6 months later, Marcus made his decision. He didn't plan a big conversation. He didn't yell or accuse. He just sat her down one quiet Sunday morning and said, "I think we need to talk about ending this." Claire's hands were folded in her lap. She didn't look surprised. She had been preparing herself for this moment. She asked, "Is this really what you want?" He said, "I want a family. I want a child. I can't wait forever." She took a breath and asked one final question. "What if the time just isn't now? What if we're supposed to wait a little longer?" He shook his head. "I've waited 10 years, Claire. I can't do this anymore." The divorce was quiet. No drama, no media frenzy. Marcus's lawyers handled everything. Claire didn't fight for money. She didn't ask for properties or businesses. She just wanted out with her dignity intact. Friends were shocked. Family members took sides. But Claire refused to speak badly about him. When people asked what happened, she simply said, "We wanted different things." It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough. The papers were signed on a Tuesday afternoon. She walked out of the lawyer's office, sat in her car, and finally let herself cry. Not because she lost him, but because she had spent 10 years believing they'd make it through anything, and they didn't. Marcus moved on quickly. Too quickly, some would say. Within 4 months, he was seeing someone new. Her name was Vanessa. She was 28, beautiful, ambitious, a marketing executive who moved in elite circles. She was everything people expected a man like Marcus to be with. Young, stunning, successful in her own right. They were seen together at charity galas, business events, high-end restaurants. The media loved it. The perfect power couple. Marcus felt alive again, like he had reclaimed control of his life. Vanessa made him feel desired, appreciated. She didn't carry the weight of disappointment. She was a fresh start. They got married 8 months after the divorce was finalized. A destination wedding in the Caribbean, exclusive guest list, designer everything. It was the kind of wedding that made headlines. Claire saw the photos online. A friend had sent them to her, probably without thinking. She looked at the images for a moment. Marcus in a white tuxedo, Vanessa in a flowing gown, both of them smiling. She closed her laptop and didn't look again. She had already started her own process of healing, and revenge wasn't part of it. But life after the wedding wasn't the fairy tale Marcus expected. Vanessa was used to a certain lifestyle. She wanted attention, events, travel, constant stimulation. Marcus realized quickly that what attracted him to her was also what exhausted him. She wasn't Claire. She didn't understand silence. She didn't value stillness. And when he tried to slow down, she grew restless. The conversations they had were surface level. She didn't ask about his childhood. She didn't care about his fears. She cared about where they were going next. What party? What trip? What acquisition? It was exciting, but it wasn't deep. And over time, excitement without depth becomes noise. Then there was the topic Marcus had been avoiding, children. Vanessa said she wanted them eventually, but not right now. She was focused on her career. She wanted to travel. She wanted to build her brand. Every time Marcus brought it up, she found a reason to delay. At first, he understood. But months turned into a year, and the very thing he divorced Claire for was now being postponed by the woman he thought would give it to him. The irony wasn't lost on him, but pride kept him from admitting it out loud. Meanwhile, Claire had moved to a smaller city 2 hours away. She rented a modest townhouse near the water. She took a part-time job at a nonprofit helping underserved children with literacy programs. It wasn't glamorous, but it filled her heart in ways money never did. She stopped going to fertility doctors. She stopped obsessing over timelines. She let go. Not because she stopped wanting a child, but because she realized she'd been holding on so tightly that she forgot how to breathe. She started painting again, something she loved in college but abandoned over the years. She joined a book club. made new friends, women who didn't know her story, women who saw her as Claire, not as the woman who couldn't have children. One evening, about 14 months after the divorce, Claire started feeling strange. Fatigue that wouldn't go away no matter how much she slept. Nausea in the mornings. At first, she thought it was stress, or maybe something she ate. But when it continued for 2 weeks, a friend suggested she see a doctor, just to be safe. Claire made an appointment, routine checkup. Nothing serious. The doctor ran some blood work, asked a few questions, then paused. When was your last cycle? Claire thought about it. She hadn't been paying attention. The doctor looked at her gently and said, "I'd like to run one more test." Claire agreed, still not understanding. 20 minutes later, the doctor came back into the room. She sat down, smiled, and said, "Claire, you're pregnant." The room tilted. Claire's breath caught in her throat. She stared at the doctor, waiting for her to say she was joking, but the doctor's face was serious, kind, certain. "You're about 8 weeks along. Healthy pregnancy so far. Congratulations." Claire's hands started shaking, not from fear, from disbelief. She had spent 10 years trying, 10 years of doctors and tests and prayers and waiting, and now, alone, divorced, in a quiet townhouse by the water, life had decided to answer. She didn't cry right away. She just sat there, trying to process what this meant. The baby was Marcus's. There was no question. The timeline made it clear. This child had been conceived in the final months of their marriage, before everything fell apart. She drove home in silence, parked in her driveway, walked inside, sat on her couch, and finally, the tears came. Not sad tears, not happy tears. Something in between, a release of every emotion she had been holding for over a decade. She placed her hand on her stomach and whispered, "You're real. You're actually real." That night, she didn't tell anyone. She just sat with the news, let it settle, let it become real. She thought about Marcus, about what this would mean, about whether she should tell him, and how. 3 days later, she called her closest friend, a woman named Grace who had walked with her through the divorce. Claire told her everything. Grace cried, then laughed, then said, "God has a sense of timing, doesn't he?" Claire smiled. "I don't even know what to feel. I wanted this for so long, but not like this, not after everything." Grace took her hand. Maybe that's the point. Maybe it had to happen this way. When the pressure was gone, when you stopped trying to control it. Claire nodded slowly. It made sense. In a painful, beautiful, complicated way, it made sense. Word started to spread quietly. Claire didn't announce it publicly, but close friends knew, family knew, and eventually, someone who knew someone mentioned it in passing at a business lunch. That's how Marcus found out. He was sitting in a conference room when his phone buzzed. A text from a mutual acquaintance. "Hey, heard some surprising news about Claire. Congrats to her." Marcus frowned. He replied, "What are you talking about?" The response came quickly. "She's pregnant, man. Thought you knew." Marcus stared at the screen. Read it again and again. His heart started pounding. He excused himself from the meeting, walked to his office, closed the door. He did the math in his head, the timeline, the dates. It was his. There was no other possibility. He sat down heavily in his chair. His mind was racing. How? They had tried for 10 years. 10 years of negative tests. And now, months after the divorce, she's pregnant. It didn't make sense. Or maybe it made perfect sense. And that's what hurt the most. He thought about calling her. But what would he even say? "Congratulations. I'm sorry. I made a mistake." He felt a wave of emotions he couldn't name. Regret, confusion, anger, grief, all of it crashing into him at once. He had walked away because she couldn't give him a child, and now she was carrying his child, the child he wanted, the legacy he craved. But it was too late. He had already chosen a different path. Vanessa noticed the change in him that evening. He was distant, distracted. She asked what was wrong. He lied and said it was work. But she wasn't convinced. Over the next few days, Marcus became withdrawn. He replayed every conversation he'd had with Claire during their marriage, every moment he'd doubted her, every time he'd made her feel like the problem was hers. And now the truth was undeniable. The problem was never her body. It was timing. It was pressure. It was impatience. And he had thrown away the one person who stood by him because he couldn't wait. Claire, meanwhile, was navigating her pregnancy with quiet strength. She went to her appointments alone. She didn't post about it on social media. She didn't make a spectacle of it. She was processing it privately, learning to accept that this blessing came in a package she never expected, wrapped in loss, wrapped in loneliness, but still a blessing. She thought about Marcus often. She wondered if he knew. She wondered what he felt, but she didn't reach out. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about her and this child. About moving forward. About building a life that didn't depend on anyone else's validation. About 3 months into the pregnancy, Marcus finally worked up the courage to contact her. He sent a simple text. "Claire, I heard the news. Can we talk?" She stared at the message for a long time. Part of her wanted to ignore it. Part of her wanted to protect the peace she'd worked so hard to build. But another part of her knew he deserved to know. He was the father. So she replied, "Okay, but not at my place. Coffee shop, tomorrow at 2. He agreed immediately. They met the next day at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. Claire arrived first. She was showing now. Not obviously, but enough that Marcus would notice. When he walked in, his eyes went straight to her. She stood up. They hugged awkwardly, sat down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Marcus broke the silence. "I don't even know where to start." Claire looked at him calmly. "Then don't. Just listen." He nodded. She continued. "Yes, I'm pregnant. Yes, it's yours. The timing lines up. I didn't plan this. I didn't even think it was possible. But here we are." Marcus's voice cracked slightly. "How?" "We tried for 10 years. Claire's expression softened. "I don't know, Marcus. I've asked myself the same question 1,000 times. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was the pressure we were under. Maybe it was just not the right time. I don't have all the answers, but I do know this. I'm not angry at you. I'm not here to make you feel guilty. I just wanted you to know because you have a right to know." Marcus looked down at his hands. "I made a mistake, didn't I?" Claire didn't answer right away. Then she said, "You made a choice. We both did. And we have to live with it." He asked, "What do you need from me?" Claire took a sip of her tea. "I don't need anything from you, Marcus. I'm financially stable. I have support. I'm going to raise this child, whether you're involved or not. But if you want to be part of this, I won't stop you. I just need to know you're doing it for the right reasons. Not out of guilt, not because you feel obligated, but because you actually want to." Marcus sat back. "I do. I want to be involved. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I don't want to miss this." Claire nodded. "Then we'll figure it out. But on my terms. I'm not going backwards. I'm not reopening old wounds. This is about the baby, not about us." Over the next few months, Marcus kept his word. He showed up to a few of the ultrasound appointments. He sent money even when Claire said she didn't need it. He checked in regularly. But he kept his distance emotionally. He knew he had forfeited the right to be more than a supporting presence. Vanessa, on the other hand, was less than thrilled. When Marcus finally told her the truth, she was furious. Not because he had a child on the way, but because it was with his ex-wife. The woman he said couldn't have children. The woman he divorced. The optics were terrible. And Vanessa cared deeply about optics. Their marriage grew colder. The arguments became more frequent. She accused him of still being in love with Claire. He denied it. But deep down, he wasn't sure anymore. Claire gave birth on a rainy Tuesday in April, a healthy baby boy. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. She named him Caleb. It means faithful. She held him in the hospital room, alone except for Grace, who had been her birth partner, and cried tears of gratitude. This was the child she had prayed for, the blessing that came when she stopped chasing it, when she stopped trying to force it, when she finally let go and trusted that if it was meant to be, it would be. Marcus came to visit 2 days later. He stood at the door of her hospital room, looking at her holding Caleb. She looked up and saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen in years. Regret. Deep, unshakable regret. She let him hold the baby. Marcus sat down carefully, cradling Caleb in his arms. He stared at his son's face, the tiny fingers, the soft breathing. And in that moment, everything he thought he wanted, everything he thought he had gained by leaving, felt hollow. He had a new wife, a new life. But this was what he had been searching for. And it had come too late. Not because it couldn't have happened earlier, but because he hadn't been willing to wait. Claire watched him quietly. She didn't gloat. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just let him have the moment, because despite everything, she knew he was still Caleb's father. And that meant something. As Marcus handed Caleb back to Claire, he said quietly, "I'm sorry. For everything. For not believing. For not waiting. For walking away." Claire looked at him with kind but firm eyes. "I forgive you, Marcus, but forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. You made your choice, and I've made mine. I'm moving forward. You're welcome to be part of Caleb's life. But you and we're not going back." He nodded. He understood. Some doors, once closed, don't reopen. Not because of bitterness, but because the season has passed. Marcus left the hospital that day a different man. Not better, not worse. Just different. He went home to Vanessa, tried to explain what he was feeling, but she didn't want to hear it. She wanted him to move on, to focus on them, to stop dwelling on the past. But how could he? The past had just become the present in the most painful way possible. Their marriage didn't last another year. They divorced quietly. No headlines this time. Just two people who realized they were never meant to be forever. Just a distraction from the real issue. And distractions, no matter how beautiful, eventually fade. Claire raised Caleb with grace and intention. She didn't keep Marcus away. He had visitation rights. He paid child support generously. He showed up to birthdays and holidays. But the relationship between them remained cordial, respectful, distant. She never remarried. Not because she was waiting for Marcus, but because she had learned to be whole on her own. And she refused to settle for anything less than a love that honored that wholeness. Caleb grew up knowing both his parents, but he also grew up seeing his mother's strength, her faith, her ability to turn pain into purpose. Years later, when Caleb was about 6 years old, he asked his mom a question. "Why don't you and Daddy live together?" Claire knelt down to his level and said, "Because sometimes people love each other, but life takes them in different directions. That doesn't mean the love wasn't real. It just means the timing wasn't right." Caleb thought about it. Then he said, "But I'm here now. So something was right." Claire smiled, tears in her eyes. "Yes, baby, you are exactly right. You are the something that was always meant to be." What would you have done in Marcus's place? Do you believe everything happens for a reason? Or was this a painful coincidence? Would you have waited longer? Or would you have made the same choice he did? And how do you think Claire should have handled it? Comment below. I'm reading every single one. If this story touched you, hit the like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because some lessons are learned not through advice, but through stories. And if you believe stories still have the power to change how we see life, click that subscribe button. The next one will stay with you even longer. Thank you for watching. And remember, life does not run on our schedules, and love is not a deadline. He had everything a man could pray for, and lost the one thing he couldn't wait for.